has undoubtedly the coolest title of any of our panels at this year's CUBE Festival. It is called Pitch, Don't Kill My Vibe, the do's and don'ts of pitching the media. And it's really no surprise that it has such a cool title because it's coming to us from a PR powerhouse, the woman behind the firm Blonde 2.0 and a CUBE global partner. Please give it up for Ayelet Noff.
So welcome to our panel, Pitch, Don't Kill My Vibe, how to approach the media. So I'm very honored to have with me today some of the most prestigious people in the media space. We have Stewart Rogers from VentureBeat, and Jona Kallgren from AP, Nina Dos Santos from CNN, and Sam Shead from Business Insider. Welcome, guys. All right, so I will start off by asking you, what's the best way to pitch you? Start with the first question. What's the best way to pitch you? Email? Should I call you at 4 a.m. in the morning?
4 a.m. in the morning, knock on the door. No, pitches for me pretty much always work best when it's someone that I know. So personal contact, whether that's an email or a phone call or you meet at a place like this, that's kind of irrelevant, to be honest. It's that I know someone, they know what I do, I know that I can trust them. That's kind of what works best, always, pretty much.
Hi there. I think I'd second that. Even if, for instance, I don't know somebody and they've taken the time to email me or call me, which actually happens quite a lot, I take my hat off to them that they've managed to get through, but I think that, as Jonas was just saying before, it's about doing your research. For me, it's less about whether or not I know them. It's about whether or not I might know a business that's similar to them, whether or not they've seen some of our programming at CNN, whether it's our business programming, our technology programming, and if they can just hook on to some of the programming we've done and say, hey, I saw that you did a story a bit like this. I've got a great idea. The other key thing I would say is to try and get a few buzzwords in that are topical at the time, whether it's sort of in the realm of business, politics, whatever, the big names. Yeah.
Stuart?
Well, for me, it has to be email first. And that's kind of a ridiculous thing to say because I get about 250 of them a day and it's the bane of my life, but I would still say email first. The other thing that works for me is I will get pitches on Twitter a lot. And people will reach out to me on Twitter and I'm quite happy for them to do so. If I think that what they have to say is really interesting, and if you can get something interesting into 140 characters, that's a skill in itself. But then I will connect with them on DM. It is ridiculously easy to find my email address, though, so I will try and divert them to that because I really want to get as much meat on the bone as possible when it comes to a pitch because I've got to make a very snap decision as to whether I'm going to cover that or not.
I would say email as well, especially email in the morning, and then I'm more open to the idea of a phone call in the afternoon. Mornings are very busy normally for me personally, writing up news that's kind of broken overnight. But yeah, I have a little bit more time in the afternoon. And I agree with Stewart, we want to see in the email, it's a good place to kind of put everything together so that you can also attach photos, you can also include links and everything. So yeah, I like email.
If I can just add, even though I am incredibly old, I think like a millennial, so if you call me, I will never want to talk to you again. You must not call me.
What if I pitch you on Snapchat? Because I know you're a big user of Snapchat.
You can pitch me on Snapchat too. I'm quite happy for you to pitch me on Snapchat.
My friend Arjun at CNBC also takes pictures by Snapchat. He loves Snapchat pictures.
Okay, so what kind of stories interest you the most, Sam? Like, what do you like to write about?
So hard, this question. Something that you want to kind of tell your friends down the pub, something that's catchy, engaging. Personally, for me, I have a few kind of areas that I'm interested in, so artificial intelligence companies. I like really cool, exciting, bright European startups, especially when they're raising lots and lots of money from big corporates and big venture capital funds. I like founders that have interesting backgrounds. So maybe they started out at Google and then they've left just to do their own company. I also just I like gossip and kind of quite salacious stuff as well. I'm not afraid to say that. Something that will make people go, ooh, or I can't believe the journalist wrote that, or I can't believe someone told him that. So yeah, something that is also new and hasn't been reported before, fresh, original, those kinds of stories, I suppose.
Stewart?
For me, I've got a very narrow area of interest. So I've been reporting on marketing technology, and really what I'm trying to do with focusing on marketing technology is tell the story of how we sell and market products and services in the 21st century. That's really what I'm trying to talk about. So I cover marketing technology. For the last 2.5 years, I've been focusing on the mobile-only, mobile-first part of that, because we all have smartphones. They're always within 3 feet of us, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's how we sell to people now. I look at artificial intelligence, but again with a marketing spin. I look at VR, MR, and AR, but again with a marketing spin. The things that really I care about the most, obviously I love product launches. I'm very blessed. I get a lot of exclusives on product launches because I've managed to carve out that niche on marketing technology, so people come to me and say they'd like me to break the news. Funding announcements are very similar. But actually the ones that give me the most joy, the articles that give me the most joy, are data stories. A lot of the vendors that I work with have access to inordinate amounts of data. So they will be processing millions, billions, or trillions of pieces of data through their platforms every single day. And that data, as long as their terms of service allows them to do this, once you aggregate it and anonymize it, allows you to tell interesting stories. For example, last year I wrote about how mobile data had managed to eradicate 93% of malaria cases in Africa using mobile data. It's a really interesting story, but it's a data story. It's not very close to marketing technology, but it is something that you can really get your teeth into, and it's much more interesting and emotional and emotive. So those are the kind of stories I like to get my teeth into outside of product launches and funding announcements.
Nina?
Obviously at CNN, particularly, we have CNN Money, CNN Tech, so we do have specific broadcast avenues for technology and also business. But as the Europe editor, I also take a look at much broader stories. So pitches that I like involve anything, for instance, that touches on today's topical issues like general election in the UK, Brexit. I did a piece recently on whether or not Berlin is managing to lure top tech talent away from the UK. And in fact, we had a number of German-based startup companies that pitched to us as examples, and we covered some of them. So the other thing that I'm quite interested in is AI, VR, just from a personal point of view, and anything to do with medical technology as well. We're doing a show on CNN, in fact, this very weekend, about how wearable technology is helping to transform people's lives, especially if they've suffered catastrophic injuries and lost limbs. There's a lot of room for programming in how technology is changing people's lives, and that's also something I'm personally quite interested in.
I'm basically doing stories for a mass market, so I'm not very picky. I want to do stories, and I'm interested in stories that I would myself would imagine myself reading or sharing. If I see something and I say, oh, that's a story that I would read, and that's a story that I would share, then that's basically a story I want to do. So, if some guy is about to wrap jetpacks to himself and fly like Iron Man, that's what I want to do. Or, if someone has invented an app that can see diseases in plants, like a company here has. That's interesting. That's what I want to do, because that's what I think people would want to see, they want to read, and they want to share. So anything like that. And I just want to pick up on the pitches again, because I know on the other side here that they said that they prefer pitches, emails with a lot of info in them. I hate that. I want 2 or 3 sentences. This is something that is cool. This is happening at this point. Are you interested? That's perfect for me. And if you need to attach more info, do it as an attachment or do it as a link. But I'm never, ever going to read through more than 4 sentences, to be honest, in a pitch email.
So, Sam, I know that you recently relocated to Berlin from London. Have you found Berlin startup stories different than London stories? And how?
So since I've been here, I've just been trying to get to know some of the big startups in the city, and the founders here are great. They're really cool Berlin-type people a lot of the time. I don't know if you've heard of Clue, but the founder of Clue is a lady called Ida Tin. She's incredible, very, very cool. I think the stories differ slightly here in that the companies are at a slightly earlier stage than they are in London. So, you know, if a company's raising money, perhaps it's not quite as much as it is in London. They're also, I'm trying to think what else is different about Berlin startup stories. That's all I can really think. It's a younger ecosystem. But generally, there are a lot of similarities between Berlin startups, UK startups, European startups. So.
Stewart, do you see a difference between Berlin and London or any other Europe?
You know, for me, I cover a lot of what's going on in the US, so I'm, you know, always bouncing back and forth around the West Coast and keeping an eye on what's going on the East Coast. I do cover European stories, and you know, for me, outside of Silicon Valley, where Silicon Valley can be kind of a ridiculous place, you know, they can fund some of the most incredibly useless products in the whole world there, and throw money at them for no apparent reason whatsoever. Whereas over here, you know, people are much more considered about what they're going to back. They're going to look much closer at whether there's a potential success or not. And so as a result of that, there is a different slant on these. They're maybe not quite as sensationalist for stories because the startups actually probably are trying to solve a problem that exists and probably have something that works. Conversely, we don't see the really massive exits that you see as well. So, you know, the rules of risk and reward, you also don't get those huge exits over here. Maybe we need a few over here in order to get the momentum you know, being pushed forward, and it's the same with Tel Aviv as well. You know, we need to see more big exits in Tel Aviv in order to keep the momentum going forward. But that's what I'd say is slightly different. It's less sensationalist, more considered.
So Nina and Jona, I know you guys work on TV, obviously. How is that different from, for example, what these guys are doing? Like, what kind of pitches are you looking for? Are you looking for more visual stuff?
I'm glad you mentioned that, actually, because it was something I wanted to bring up. Yes, obviously, when you're working in the TV side, the big advice I have to anybody out there who is looking to pitch to a TV company is think about it visually. And this goes back to what you were just saying before about how if some of the companies are very much in their nascent stage, it might be quite difficult for you to communicate to us how much we can see. Very often we'll go and film startups and there's only 3 people sitting behind a desk in a room. From a TV point of view, if we're filming that, what we really need then is some kind of really good illustrations of what you do. And in fact, funnily enough, I was just back at my old university, Imperial College, which is a science university, yesterday, having this similar conversation with some of the scientists there. What they do from their communications point of view now is they've started to commission illustrations of their technology, what it could do in some cases, in a rather cost-efficient way. Sometimes that works, actually. If you're sending out a few pitches to visual media and say, look, this is a mock-up of what we think our technology can do, sometimes it's worth it, really, if you're dealing with especially TV and magazines where they need to be able to visualize what you're talking about.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, essentially, some products and some platforms are just never going to be, you know, you're never really going to be able to do them for television, to be honest, and that's unfortunate. But then you need to focus on maybe getting more coverage in newspapers or websites or whatever. But if you have a product that is visual, then, you know, we're probably going to cover it. If your product is not that visual, then agree. You know, figure out the way to make it visual, produce a video, produce, you know, graphics, and then you're kind of halfway there.
So what's the best pitch you ever got?
It's quite difficult, to be honest. I mean, I think I just mentioned it already. You know, simple, a few sentences, straight to the point, like you know, a
Is
guy.
there one specific company that
Well,
pitched you? And
the one I can think of right now is obviously what we saw today. A guy is about to fly like Iron Man. You know,
that I pitched you.
the one that you pitched me, yes. But you know, it's straight to the point. It's easy to understand, and I know it's going to get a lot of play. You know, I know that filming that, doing a story about that, it's going to work really well. And the pitch that you sent me was straight to the point. I don't need to know how this invention is going to potentially change aviation, you know, or anything else. I can think about that myself. All I need to know is that this guy is doing that. It's happening at this time, and you know, you can be there.
I don't want to be obtuse and not answer the question specifically, but there isn't one specific example of a best pitch because the story was the best pitch. Because as a journalist, it's my job to find the story that is the best news line out there. So if there is a great story, I should know about it before somebody pitches to me. But when it comes to the best pitches that have been sent to me, aside from the actual content of them, it's all about the delivery in an email. Personally, I've got to say I think there's 3 against 1 here. I'm for the email with a lot of information and a lot of visuals because that helps me pitch that myself to my bosses, especially if it involves the cost of traveling to going to film something. But the best pitches are, to me, are personal ones where somebody's taken the time to at least get my name right and the name of my show right, which you'd be surprised sometimes there's confusion there. Don't send the bog standard pitch to people where it's, hi, so-and-so. As you may have noticed, today's news is, no. Just send short, sweet, but personalized. Those are the best pitches. Some of the worst pitches I've got are obviously the ones where, you know, there might be, my name might be wrong, the name of my show might be wrong. Try and get the details right, because if they're not right, the journalist will just press delete.
Stewart?
It's difficult to pick out one best pitch. Of course, anything from Blonde 2.0 is usually faultless. But you know, I would say, you know, if I can be contrarian and tell you what not to do, it is very, very easy to see what I write about. I mean, it takes literally 5 seconds. Google is your friend. And if you type my name into Google, you can very easily read what I write about. It's there. It's right in front of your face. So I am still absolutely bamboozled about how many times I get completely off-topic pitches each week. In fact, I do occasionally tweet them out as a this week's off-topic pitches are, and I'll list them out. And I've had everything from a rolling ball that picks up dust in your house, which is not exactly marketing technology, to a range of adult toys that can be controlled by your smartphone, which although interesting, is not really what I write about. So I'll actually call those out on Twitter every single week because it's funny to do so. So don't do that. Just do about 5 seconds of research. It really takes that long.
I got pitched an interview with Steve Wozniak on a bus once. That was quite a good one.
Okay, so what are the top, if you had to pick like the top 3 tips for people on how to pitch you, top 3 tips?
Read what we've covered before, figure out what our interests are, and cut out all the marketing crap, like world-leading, premier, best. Like, we'll decide if that's the case or not.
Revolutionary.
Yeah, there are so many hyped up words that you can use. We'd rather just see it without, personally anyway, I'd rather see it without those words. I think that was 3, just about.
Do your research. That's number 1. Get to know us, and you know, actually get to know what makes us tick, rather than just launching straight into a pitch. And 3, give us time. I mean, personally, I'm in a different position, I guess, than you know, everybody else on the panel today, because I'm not a full-time journalist. I'm also an analyst, so I'm writing reports and studies and analysis as well as articles. So I typically need 7 to 10 days notice on everything. So if you start your email with the word today, I'm probably going to delete it because I don't have time to cover it if you're only telling me about it today.
Nina?
I hate to sound like a broken record, but yeah, do your research, get to know our content, try and get to know us if you can, because obviously we're in visual media on this side of the panel. Try and think of some way to visualize it and put that in the email if you can, whether you can get an illustration or some kind of visual thing or a comparison going in your mind when you put that in the email.
I agree, essentially. The only thing I would potentially add is, look outside of your own little box. Does your product fit into something that is happening in the wider world? Like, for example, during the refugee crisis here in Berlin, I was getting pitches from companies saying, my product could potentially help with this in different ways. And, obviously, I'm much more inclined to read that pitch and do a story about that when that fits into other news stories that are kind of happening at the same time.
What do you guys think about embargoes versus exclusives? Do you have a specific opinion about that? Sam?
I think I'd rather an exclusive. We'd rather be first to the news than anyone else. I guess with an embargo, there's going to be several publications publishing the same story, albeit their own version of it at the same time. And it just means we have to share the readers, basically. So I would rather an exclusive story. Embargoes can be good because they can give you a bit of time to prepare, but then I guess you get that with an exclusive as well. So.
Yeah, and thinking about embargoes and exclusives from the point of view of the people pitching to us, you've got to be really, really confident that your product is incredibly interesting and groundbreaking if you're going to give me an embargo. And the reason for that is, if you give me the exclusive, and I cover that on VentureBeat. If it's very, very interesting, the other publications will pick it up. If it's not very interesting, they'll let us have the exclusive and they'll skip on it. They'll just pass on it. So I would say, be very honest about the story that you're telling. And if it's something really amazing and awesome, the exclusive is not a bad option for you. But it can be a double-edged sword. If you pitch something sort of relatively mediocre or that's been done 100 times before, and put it out there as an exclusive, that's probably only going to hit one publication because everyone else will pass on it.
Just on embargoes quickly, one thing I don't understand is when a PR will send you an email saying, do you mind if I send you this embargoed story? I would rather just see the embargoed story and they have to just assume that I'm going to trust the embargo. I think there are some journalists out there that are just like, they do away with embargoes. There's some guys at Sky who just break embargoes all the time because they can. They're powerful enough. They're big enough journalists to just. But yeah, I will always respect the embargo.
I think a lot of it depends on the actual content, doesn't it? So for us at CNN, obviously the exclusive bar has to be pretty high for us to market it as an exclusive internally, obviously. So exclusives are very helpful. In my experience, sometimes as well, something can be marketed to you as an exclusive. You pitch it to your boss as an exclusive, but 2 days down the line when you get the sign-off, it's not exclusive anymore, which will create tensions between the journalist and the PR person who's pitching that to you. So be very, very aware of that. If you mention an exclusive to one journalist, you can't take that away when they've suddenly raised it to their bosses. But the bar's quite high for us at international TV networks on exclusives. Embargoes, I totally agree with you, Sam. I mean, some people just break them, and then the problem is it worth having them in the first place?
I love exclusives, obviously, but I have a small problem with them. I can't just film a product or a new service and then put it out as it is. I need to get an independent comment on it. I need someone from somewhere, a university or whatever, to say this is going to work or this is not going to work. And if I'm not allowed to share information about the product, then I'm not going to be able to get that comment, and therefore I won't be able to run that story. So that's my only problem with exclusives. Embargoes, I quite like embargoes because it gives me time as a TV journalist to actually film a product, edit the story. All of this is time consuming. If I get a week to do it rather than an hour and a half, then that kind of helps me.
So Mike Butcher, who some of you know, has said that the press release is dead. What do you think about that statement? Do you believe in press releases? Do you not believe in press releases?
Disagree. I think they're still useful to an extent. I don't think journalists should rely on them. I don't think PR should rely on them either. But I think they can be a useful resource still, just to pull information from, not copy and paste, obviously, but facts, figures, and things can be quite useful to extract from press releases.
Yeah, mad love for Mike, as everybody knows, but I disagree wholeheartedly. Press releases are very important to me. Not that I'm going to use your press release to write any of the story, but I need that information for background so that I understand what it is that I am actually going to write about. So press releases for me are not dead, not by a long chalk.
I'd say press releases are not dead, but they're secondary. You should already have spoken to the journalist, if possible, before you send a press release. And usually, in many cases, the kind of stories we're covering is the press release will come after the big story that's quite a serious story has broken. So yes, they're very informative afterwards. We immediately go looking for them afterwards, but it's often after the news has broken.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I only need a press release for facts and figures, essentially. After I've covered a story, I can go back and check that the facts and figures that I have are correct. Essentially, I just need bullet points. That's pretty much all I would need from a press release.
We don't have a lot of time, but I would like to end with this final question. What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about media?
For me, it's this idea that I can myself create, something viral. If I cover a story, then it'll become viral and everyone will love it. That's not really the way it works. I mean, I have an editor, my editor has an editor, and then there's the public. They're also going to decide. So, sometimes stories that will get a lot of traction. They will get a lot of, they'll become, so to speak, viral, and other times not. And it's weird. I can't really say this is going to work and this is not going to work. It could be bad luck that your story that I've covered on your product breaks on the same day when there's a revolution in Turkey, and then no one is going to care. It could be lucky that everyone wants a story about, I don't know, hobby horsing in Finland. Did anyone see that? Because it's a slow news day.
No.
I agree. I think the element of control that a journalist has over the story on any day, especially if you're working in the news business. If you're on the feature side, you have a little bit more control. But if you're on the news side, especially in the TV medium, where we put a lot of work and investment into doing a 2-minute 30 TV report, it can air on a day when some really big news happens, and that's out of your control.
Biggest current misconception of the media today is that everything we say is fake news or alt facts. We all work very, very hard to tell a balanced story, and we all try very, very hard to tell the truth. So that's the biggest misconception of the media, regardless of whether we're covering something incredibly technical or incredibly mainstream.
Stewart stole my answer.
All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have. So thank you very much for being with us here. And thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A big thank you to all of our panelists, and if I can distill this into one bit of advice, I think it would be do your research. It's good advice for anyone, especially if you're planning to pitch a journalist.